Three, two, one. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the number one college podcast in the world right now, Barry and Vilv. My name is Barry,
This is Vilv.
and today we're going to talk about international experience, primarily focusing on Vilv. So yes, today we're going to be talking about Vilv's international journey from his country to the United States here at Georgia Tech. But before we begin, Vilv, do you want to talk about last week?
So there's not too much to talk about, but thank you guys for continuing to support us on the videos. We love the comments and the likes and anything on Instagram and TikTok and Spotify. Thank you for all the plays. It really helps us out. Really lets us know that you guys are enjoying the content. And feel free to give us feedback because like we said, we're just starting out. We are definitely open to constructive criticism. If you have anything off. And also, I just wanted to give a big shout out to Fahmy for coming on for the next episode. If you guys haven't watched that yet, please go ahead and it's up on YouTube, it's up on Spotify. Please see that. He really talked about a lot of important stuff. So he was our first guest on the podcast. We plan to have a lot more people on board. So yeah, just wanted to give him a shout out.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bill. Just to piggyback on that, for me, you did an incredible job last episode talking to us about the FAFSA and early admission. So thank you so much for that. And like Bill mentioned, yes, please continue to give us the feedback, honest feedback, because that's the only way that we can truly improve. And if you all would like to get featured one day, please shoot us a DM or just let us know, and we would definitely take that into consideration. Now, Bill, let's get right into it, man. Let's see. So the first question here today, Bill, please introduce yourself to give the audience a refresher from from the very first episode. I know that was like 3 or 4 episodes ago, but please give the audience a refresher on who you are.
Yeah, so my name is Daniel Islam. That's my real name. I'm a third-year computer engineering major here at Georgia Tech. I am not from America originally. I'm from the great country of Bangladesh. I'm an international student in America, trying to find his way through, trying to pursue college and hopefully move on to something greater. I don't know what else to say.
No,
Yeah.
that's awesome, actually, Bill. Thank you for sharing that, man. So you mentioned Bangladesh, right? I guess this can go into my second question. I'm pretty sure that's like thousands of miles away. I think the last time I checked, it's like somewhere between 8,000 miles, 8,400 miles away. And I'm just curious, how do you all, in countries like that, how do you all hear about opportunities, or how do you all learn about the colleges and universities in the United States?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I think Bangladesh, to be kind of exact, is like 8,440 miles or something like that away from Atlanta. So the way we hear about it is the way you hear about anything in America. America is very difficult to miss, right? In terms of the media, in terms of social media, in terms of the normal, let's say CNN or whatever, the actual news media. America, anything that happens in America, you hear about it around the world. It being, I guess, the quote unquote number one country in the world. So kind of college is no exception to that. You hear about the big names, obviously the Harvards and Stanfords and all that kind of stuff. But what happens from there is for me at least, was that I know all these big names, but I also, when I started applying to colleges, I had to research just like everybody else does into colleges and started looking into what other colleges there was, and obviously the first thing I think everybody goes to look at is the college rankings. There you have Quest, you have U.S. national rankings. So I was just looking into all these things, and I was looking into engineering schools because I wanted to pursue an engineering degree. So I looked into it, and a consistent name, especially when it came to engineering or anything like public schools or whatever, always was Georgia Tech. So automatically that became one of the colleges I was thinking about applying to, and I applied to it, and here I am.
Wow. No,
Yeah.
that's pretty awesome, man. And you're definitely right. America does have, influence, around the world. And bro, I'm so happy that you heard about Georgia Tech. I'm so happy that you decided to come here. Because if it wasn't for that, bro, I don't think I would have ever met you, actually, bro. So alhamdulillah, man. Thank God for that. I want to transition here and ask you like a two-part question here, right? So first, right, what was your feeling? What was that reaction when you finally realized that you got into Georgia Tech? Number one, and number two, how did COVID actually play into that?
Yeah, so I remember I applied to Georgia Tech actually early on. So I got my decision around January, mid-January, I believe, or third week of January, something like that. And I was super excited. I applied to Georgia Tech. This was actually the first college I got into. In general, I applied to colleges in the U.S. and some in Canada and some in other parts of the world, but it was the first college I actually got into in terms of anything. So it was a huge deal for me. I actually that gave me a good sense of relief that okay, my college application is good, right? Because it's like the first one is always a good reminder that, or a reinforcer that okay, you're in the right path. You know what I mean? You're actually you're doing something right. So from that sense, it was a big relief. It was a big excitement that I got into a college like Georgia Tech. I honestly didn't think I would because I saw the rankings, I saw the some of the people talking about it online. I was like, oh, this seems like a really competitive schools. But I got in alhamdulillah, and from there on normally the process would be so since I got in early, I also applied to a few other schools, regular decision. So I was just waiting on those till like end of March. And after all my 12 left over, I was probably best to go for Georgia Tech based on what I had options left over. So normally the process, the way it goes is that you would have you by the end of April, you would make your mind up about where you're wanting to go, especially if you're international. So that's basically what happened with me as well. At the end of the April, I was pretty like in my mind, I was pretty sure that I was going to Georgia Tech. I let Georgia Tech know, and once you let the college know, they usually send you a documentation called an I-20, which is required for the visa. So you take the I-20 and you apply for the visa, and then you get called up for an interview. You take the I-20 again, go to the interview in person to the embassy, and everything, inshallah, if everything goes well, you get the visa, you book a flight, and you come to the US. Very simple process, pretty straight, simple process. It takes a bit of time because there's a lot of entities involved. But yeah, but unfortunately, that obviously wasn't the case, as you said in your second question. COVID messed everything up. So, uh, I mean, I don't think this is a surprise that a lot of everybody around the world, like every country, I feel like almost every country definitely had a lot of slowing down in terms of everything, like closing up or there being less staff involved or whatever. But unlike in America, I know in America there was not like a nationwide lockdown. There might have been some things that might have closed up or understaffed or whatever. But in Bangladesh, we actually had like a nationwide lockdown for like a good part of 3 weeks to a month. And during that time, like I'm talking about everything being closed, like schools, offices, government offices, and embassies are no exception to that. So when everything closed up, it was like I had all my documentation that I needed for to get the visa, but I applied for the visa, but there was nobody to take my interview. It was like because the embassy was closed. So because we had the lockdown, embassies closed. I waited, and towards I think end of July, I pretty much started to understand and accept the fact that I wasn't probably going to go to college this semester, which was hard to accept, but it was like it was the reality. It was like it was what was going to happen. I was never going to make it in time because there was no noise of the embassy opening or anything like that. So what I did was I contacted Georgia Tech and asked them what I should do, and Georgia Tech basically kind of landed me and said that okay, we're offering online courses to anybody who can't make it on campus, not only international, but anybody off, let's say, out of state who can't make it on campus because of health concerns or whatever. They don't want to travel or whatever. We're offering remote courses, and also the U.S. government actually had this sort of, I guess, ruling or whatever passed on where they were willing to exempt the requirement for the visa that a student would normally require to come and study at the U.S. So they were like, you don't need the visa because of COVID for now. You can just stay out and study and do it all remotely if your college is offering that option. So that was a good thing. I got to started doing college and all whatnot, but the first semester ended online, everything. But when the second semester came, it was like it was the same story. It was like there wasn't any notification from like the embassy or anybody else. And what happened was we just ended up since I was again like, oh, I'm probably gonna do my second semester again online as well. So my parents were like, "Oh well, we haven't really." They saw that I was kind of bummed out by that. It really takes a toll on you because you're like, I actually got into college, but I can't go to college, which is so weird. You're feeling like really stranded away from college, even though you're actually studying and you actually completed an entire semester. You don't know anybody there. You haven't met anybody in real life. You haven't experienced the college life, quote unquote. And so what happened was that my parents saw that I was really like down, and like everybody like in my family was like, okay, let's go for like a vacation somewhere. And being COVID, everybody everywhere was closed, so we decided to go to Dubai actually. So we went to
Uh,
Dubai for like for like a week, and yeah, after that, kind of came to the US. There was a yeah, it kind of went like that. Yeah.
wow. Okay. Wait. First of all, wait. Now wait a minute, now, Bill. Your family took you to Dubai because you was feeling down? Man, I wish my family could have done that for me. But
No.
we're gonna get to that. But first, as you were speaking, I actually wrote down some notes. So okay, yes. So the virtual thing. As you said, I also wanted to like clarify that and how that situation was here in the U.S. And I also heard you speaking about visas. I want you to talk more about that soon, and the Dubai thing, we will get to that. But first, the virtual thing, I did want to clarify. So let's see. So you were asking, if the U.S. had some sort of like lockdown. Um, if I remember correctly, we didn't have a full nationwide lockdown. Like during the pandemic, there were still some things like there were still some essential services that were open. For example, grocery stores or like phone service retailers. Those like essential like businesses were open, but like everything else, for example, when it came to like restaurants or like I think movie theaters, like all of those kind of things that weren't as essential kind of closed down, right? And even in terms of academia, school. I remember vividly. It was March 2020. I was in my last semester of senior year, and all of a sudden, you think things were going smoothly. Now all of a sudden, they said, "Hey, kids, pack your bags. You're going back home. The rest of the semester, you're gonna finish high school remotely." And I was like, wow, I worked all these years. I wanted to finally, walk across the stage, make my family happy. And guess where I graduated from? But you would not believe it, bro. Facebook. Facebook, bro. Facebook. I don't know about you. Did you at least get a chance to
I
have an in-person
What do you mean
graduation or no?
Facebook? Like we had like a. I remember we had like ours was also virtual, but we had like a Zoom meeting where we were all like dressed
Zoom.
up, our gowns, and
Zoom.
like
Wow. Hey,
uh,
I guess let me ask you: was yours at least live? Because ours was pre-recorded, bro. It was not
wait,
even live. It was
wait,
not.
wait, wait. What
It
do you
was not
mean
even live.
pre-recorded? Wait a second. Yeah,
Let
ours
me.
was live. Ours was like a Zoom meeting. Everybody on class was just inside the Zoom meeting. I will preface like our class normally had like 100 something students, so it's like not a lot of students, but we had a Zoom meeting. Like everybody dressed up and just they
Wow.
just called your names, and normally it wasn't
Wow.
obviously like a real thing, but like it was the closest they could do. What do you mean recorded? Did
Dude,
your school
bro,
not know Zoom existed?
bro. They did because we did our remote classes in Zoom. I mean, I would have taken that. So for us, what happened was apparently they somehow took like a whole bunch of photos of us and threw it into a collage and then basically turned it into a video. So it wasn't even live, bro. But I remember vividly, bro. I got back home from work that day, and I was like, "Mom, Dad, come on, turn on the TV. I'm gonna throw in my HDMI. I'm gonna connect my computer to the TV." Logged into Facebook, and there it was. But Facebook, it was like a pre-recorded graduation, bro. It was definitely interesting, but I guess let's transition now to talking about visas. I know you mentioned something about I'm not an international student, but I wasn't born in the U.S. I was born in Guinea, West Africa. I came to the U.S. when I was 5 with my parents. I think we came on a visa, but is that visa different from the visas that you're talking about, like the F1 and the I-20? Can you not talk more about what that is?
Yeah, so yeah, that visa is different, but the principle is the same. So the visa purpose of any visa is, it's not only unique to the U.S. Any country you want to visit, at least most of the countries you want to visit, you need to get a visa, which is basically a permission to enter the country. So what you need, I don't know what visa you used for to come to the U.S., but the visa the
I
students
wouldn't know. I was 5 years old then.
yeah, it was a long time ago, but I'm pretty sure it was a different visa because the students have their own visa. It's called an F1 visa, and
Mm.
there's also something called a J visa, but that's a bit different. So normal students for like college or even I think high school use F1 visa. So that's basically the one I was talking about. That's the one you need to study in the U.S. normally. Yeah.
Ah, I see, I see. Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, cool, cool, cool. That's really interesting. Thank you. And don't think I forgot. Going back to the Dubai thing now, we you have to clarify this, bro.
Okay.
I'm not gonna let you slide easily. You gotta clarify this. Wait, all of a sudden, mom and dad said, "Son, let's take a trip to Dubai."
No, no, no.
Ah,
Okay,
I
look.
wish my
Okay,
family
let
could
me.
do that, man.
Now, bro, look. Let me clear this up. Okay, I know here when you maybe in America, I've noticed this when I've talked to other people is like when you mentioned Dubai, they're like, oh, he probably has a lot of money, whatever. It's like it's really not like that because Dubai, if you think about it geographically, is actually quite close to Bangladesh. So it's like a 3.5 or 4 hour flight. So the flight ticket is not that expensive. It's like here to California. Basically, the flight ticket is going to be here to California, and yeah, so it's like it's not a hugely expensive holiday to go to Dubai from Bangladesh to Dubai. You know what I mean? It's like going to California, let's say. I know there's a lot of people, alhamdulillah, we're able to afford it. I know there's a lot of people here as well who can't afford a trip to like just like take a flight to California because it's expensive. But like, yeah, I don't want to make it sound like it's some crazy thing. It's like it's very nice, definitely, but it's like not like super uber luxury or anything like that. I just want to make this sure. We still went on economy, okay? Don't get me wrong.
Sure,
We don't have money to go
sure.
on first class, man.
No, no, for sure, for sure. So I guess we can transition here to the next question here, Bill. So, okay, this is like 3 years ago, right? Back in 2019, 2020.
Mhm.
Boom. You got into the best engineering school in the world, arguably the best university in the world. You got your paperwork situated, by January, right? You got the plane ticket. Now, tell us, how was that experience actually getting to the United States and eventually here at Georgia Tech?
So yeah, like I said, the experience was interesting because, like I said, after I made that trip to Dubai, we came back, and even then, when I just came back, I was like, oh, still not going. Right, I was preparing for school, which was still like a couple weeks away. January something it was when I think January 10th or something was when school was supposed to open. So I was still like, oh, I'm just gonna prepare for school now. Done with the trip, a lot happier, mentally in a better state. Um, Even though it's kind of a bummer. But what happened was a couple days went by, and one of my friends actually reached out, and they were like, "Hey, do you know that the U.S. embassy is actually open now? They're actually processing visas." I'm like, "Wait, what? I didn't know that." So I just like in like a couple days, I just fixed up everything because my application was already set. You just have to book an appointment. So I went to the appointment center. And I was like, "Oh, cool! There's appointments available." Because my application set, so I just set up an appointment, went to give an interview. This is, mind you, this is like January 3rd or something like that. Went in an interview. Class starts January 10th. So within a week, I got my visa. January 10th, 11th, I got my visa. Class has already started, so I'm already doing classes remotely. And the next week, I just booked a flight and came to the US. So the good thing, I guess, for me was a lot of things kind of worked out. And alhamdulillah was that one thing that worked out was that I came in during like a MLK holiday. So it was like I think MLK's day is like January 18th, or I'm not sure, but it was like basically a 3 day weekend. So I came in on a Saturday. I kind of had 3 days to kind of acclimatize and set myself up, and didn't have to worry about classes as much, obviously, because classes just started. And the other thing that was really beneficial for me, at least, was that I have relatives who like I have a cousin and a family here who live in Atlanta. They basically literally picked me up from the airport and set me up with like even the minimum things, right? Like getting a SIM card or like setting up a bank account. And I remember you helped me set up a bank account. I mean, the first time I ever went to a bank by
Yeah.
myself. Every other time I've been to a bank, it was like I didn't have a bank account back in Bangladesh, so it was always like going with my parents if I ever did. Like
Right.
I barely ever went. It was with my parents if I ever did.
Mm.
So this was my first time going to a bank account and try to get the whole experience of actually setting up a bank account on my own, setting up a debit card, all that stuff. And I remember when we went together and you helped me with that appointment. Thank you for that. Definitely
Bro, of
big
course.
experience.
Anything for you, bro. You my homie, bro. Of course.
Nah, so like that's why I say alhamdulillah I was very fortunate because I had people around me who was like I knew and I was like helping out who were like helping me out with a lot of different things, even the minimum things that people don't think about like getting groceries, stuff like that. So I know a lot of people when they first come into the country they're not as lucky as me. They don't know anybody here. They can come to a state where they don't know anybody there and it becomes very difficult because you have to like set up all these things that people might not worry about and may take for granted, but you're coming to a new country, you have to set up all these things and you have to do it by your own. For me, like I had someone to drive me around, I had you to help me set up a bank account, and I had people to try to sort of help me out. So I would definitely recommend if people are when they're coming to study in the US, definitely try to build up some connection or try to find some connection, something that can like someone who's willing to help you around, like figure stuff around, especially if this is the first time, if this is your first time coming to the US and you're not aware or you don't know how the systems here work. So yeah, for me
Yeah.
alhamdulillah that was really a good thing that really helped me settle down. But obviously the other stuff is like being away from home and stuff like that is like psychological toll on you. But
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
over
Actually,
time you become, yeah.
yeah, that's actually a great point. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but in terms of like, yeah, Bill, please talk more about that, about the difference. Your experiences in first time here at Georgia Tech compared to like life back home. How was it like a culture shock, or like what kind of different experiences did you go through?
Yeah, so like I said, I was just gonna go into that. It's like the homesick factor where you're like away from home, so you definitely miss the home, the lifestyle, and all that. So coming from Bangladesh, it's a very very different country in so many respects to the U.S. And not only in terms of like the economic aspect, like it's a third world country versus a first world country, but it's also like just the environment. Like Bangladesh, let's say a Muslim majority country, people behave a different way. It's not as modernized, let's say, as the Western countries. You get exposed to a lot more when you come to the US. But I guess social media makes it a lot more easier in many ways because you watch YouTubers or like influencers online and you get more exposed to it. And for me, I mean, I don't know. I remember you said this to me, and a bunch of people so far. It's like when I talked to them, they said, "I don't. Oh, I thought you were American because I guess my accent comes off that way." Because growing up, I went to like an American curriculum school where we had like American teachers, like actual American citizens as teachers. So that's how I kind of picked up the accent. So it's like people don't really realize I'm international until I actually mention it that I'm international. They just think I'm like like a Asian American, like an Indian American or something like that. I don't know, something like that. So it's like for me, it was like I was very aware of American culture, but it was definitely not a culture shock, but it was more so an awakening in the sense that a lot of things back home I would take for granted. For instance, back home we actually have like a lot of people to help us around the house with, like maids and like a person to drive us around, like a chauffeur or whatever. I know, okay, I know what you're
Whoa,
thinking.
whoa,
You're
whoa,
thinking,
whoa, whoa, wait a minute, Bill. You guys
no,
used to have your own personal maids and chauffeurs. I feel
no,
like
no,
I'm living in the wrong country, man.
no. It's like that's what I'm trying to say. Like it's a different country, like a different culture, different way of life. So it's like obviously my parents, I would say, are our family was in a very comparatively privileged position. But even other than that,
Alhamdulillah.
if you're like even middle class people have people to help them around in the house with. This is a very normal concept. They have middle class people in Bangladesh, at least middle to a little bit above middle class, can actually afford a car these days because it's becoming more affordable. It's becoming and people are having a higher average income. So it's like becoming more normal to have a car in Bangladesh. And that's the reason why people can also actually have everybody pretty much who has a car has a person to drive them around in a car. So everybody pretty much has a chauffeur. The concept of a chauffeur in the US, I know it's a big deal. Like you have to have, if you when you think about a chauffeur, you're like, oh, this guy's a millionaire, whatever, whatever. It's like
Right.
it's not really a like that's what I'm trying to say. These are the differences that I'm trying to highlight. Like life in Bangladesh is actually pretty comfortable compared to the US if you really think about it. If
Mm.
you have at least yeah, if you come from a if you have a decent amount of wealth, and I'm not even talking about millionaire money. I'm talking about middle class, upper middle class, if you have that much money, life can be very comfortable. You can get people to help you around with a lot of the things. Here, for instance, you come from work, you have to go to the Walmart to do your groceries, then you have to cook and do all this thing and drive
Right.
yourself to work and stuff like that. But there's actually people to help you out. I mean, there's even people to help you out with laundry. Like I didn't ever have to worry about doing my own laundry because there were like people to help me out with that. So
Right.
I'm not even talking about laundromats. I'm just talking about people in your house that would do the laundry for you. You know what I mean? So
Right. Right.
those kind of things were kind of like things that I kind of had to get used to, like the independence about
Mm.
getting the independence and getting learning to do my own things, cleaning my own house, cleaning my own dorm, cleaning all this kind of like regular stuff that I guess a lot of people living here take it to be very normal. It's actually when you come from that part of the world, you're not used to doing it as much. For you, it can be very like new. So that's the thing I had to get used to doing.
Wow.
But in terms of culture shock, I wouldn't say it was a huge culture personally for me. But I know some people, if they come in and they get exposed to the different lifestyle, the different ideology, the city life, especially when you're in a big city like Atlanta, it's different than outside. So it's like they may
Yeah,
get a bit overwhelmed. Yeah,
and I'm also assuming like there's probably some sort of like religious shock, right? Because going,
yeah,
because I think Bangladesh is like a majority Muslim country, and you coming to the U.S. here, so kind of like so it's kind of like you came from where you was a majority, and now you're like a minority, right? Like in the
yeah,
U.S.
yeah. That's a very good point. I mean, that's a very good point. Yeah, thinking about that, and also, yeah, being a majority in a country and coming and feeling being a minority, right? It's like I guess it's people don't really think about those kind of things, but it actually impacts a lot of about the way you carry yourself and the way you interact with others around you, right? Because yeah, and the
Mhm.
religious aspect you definitely mentioned, like Bangladesh being a Muslim majority colony, me being Muslim in a Muslim majority country. I was definitely you're used to seeing people, let's say, carrying themselves in a certain way, dressing a certain way, eating certain types of food. You come here, it's very different,
Right,
so that's kind
right.
of something to get used to. But yeah, for me those were the main things to get used to when I came here.
Wow, mashallah, man. Listen, man. My takeaway from here is that back in Bangladesh, you were living like a king, bro. hey,
Bro, no, no, honestly,
hey, I
honestly
feel like I'm living
comparatively,
in
if
the
you
wrong country, man.
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, especially if you don't even have to have hella money. Like I'm talking about,
Wow,
if you're good, like above middle class, upper middle class, you're actually living a very good life in Bangladesh, like compared to the
wow.
US. Like most people in the US, you need to have a lot of money to get that very uber luxury life where you have people doing stuff for you.
Right.
Versus here, you really don't.
Shoot.
Because the thing is, like, I'll bring this in as well. Because Bangladesh, compared to the US, Bangladesh is actually the most densely populated country in the world. Uh,
Wow.
we we have 180 million people, roughly 180 million people living in a country that's the size, probably size of Georgia or less than that.
No
So,
way.
well, yeah.
Wow.
So put that into perspective, right? And so it's like
wow.
countryside of Georgia, probably less than that actually. I think 180 million people living in that. So there's a lot of people around, especially a lot of people who don't have, let's say, as good of an educational background, who
hmm
are willing to do a lot of things. So that's why it's like not as uncommon to have people drive you around or people helping you around in the house or people doing the cleaning stuff or the laundry stuff because
For
there's so
sure.
many people. There has to be jobs that
Yeah.
are kind of have to be created. You know what I mean? Hopefully
Mm.
that'll change though in the future as Bangladesh is becoming more modernized. People are becoming
Inshallah,
more.
man.
So,
Inshallah,
yeah.
inshallah. Let's actually take a little pivot actually here in just a moment up. So let's go back to last week, right? So last week we spoke about FAFSA, federal aid, early admission, and all that. So I'm kind of curious, right? As an international student, right? And you know me, I'm a business student. I love money. I want to hear about the financials, bro. So how was that experience for you in terms of like, getting help, getting aid, getting the financials together once you got here?
Yeah, so I think the financial aspect of it is interesting for me personally. Alhamdulillah, again, I will say I'm from a very privileged background in the sense that I know you're a first generation college student
Yeah.
versus me, where both my parents have master's degree.
Man,
So
wait. Hey, wait a minute, Joe. Let me call my dad real quick and ask him, well, why doesn't he have a master's degree, man? Nah, I'm just
I mean,
messing around. I wish
uh,
my parents had a master's degree, bro.
I mean, yeah. So for me, it's like I'm from a privileged background in that sense, where my parents are doing good jobs, and they're able to help me out with the college education. They're able to support my education, and so I'm very privileged in the sense that so I don't have to worry about financials as much. I don't have to worry about FAFSA. I don't have to worry about education scholarships or whatever, taking out a loan or financial aid. But I will say this: it is very expensive. I do
Mm,
know how much money it takes, and I know it's crazy expensive. And I've actually tried my best to change that situation. I reached out to Georgia Tech. They don't offer any institutional scholarships. Obviously, I'm not international, so I don't apply for financial federal aid. So
mm.
Georgia Tech doesn't help me, even though my GPA, I would say, alhamdulillah, is very, very, I would say above average, definitely above average. So it's
Hey
like
man, I wish my GPA was above average, man. But we're not even gonna go there, man.
it's like it's in the twos. It's fine. You know what?
Hey, listen, listen, listen. Hey, don't expose me like that, Bill.
No,
I know I got a 2.7, but don't expose me like that, man.
no, no,
Hey, hey, my goal this semester is to bring it up, okay?
no, no. It's like I guess I will kind of call out Georgia Tech. I mean, I actually applied for the. I told you I applied for the out of state tuition waiver,
Mm,
and I wrote a 3-page essay. I submitted tax document, bank documents. I explained why I needed the aid and how whatever. And Georgia Tech just was like, nah, we won't give you the money. I qualified in terms of the
dang.
GPA cutoff, so they just wouldn't like help me out with that. It's like I will call out Georgia Tech here because I know schools like, for instance, Georgia State, who are, I mean, let's be honest, like let's call a spade here. Georgia Tech is a better school than Georgia State. Let's be honest. So it's like
Mm,
if a college like Georgia State is offering its college students, international students, scholarships and like out of state tuition waivers and this and that, then why isn't Georgia Tech offering this? Even though I'm pretty sure they have a higher funding from the government or whatever entity they're
mm.
from.
Yeah, Bill, that's actually an interesting point there because Georgia Tech is actually battling with with other schools in its league, for example, the Harvards of the world, the MITs and the Stanfords, as well as other universities that aren't in its league, like for example the Georgia State, like you mentioned, and it's really outrageous that out of all these schools, Georgia Tech is one. It's like the only one that doesn't provide that many resources to international students. Right? Georgia Tech is competing for the same students as Stanford, Harvard, and MIT. And when you look at those universities, and when you look at the resources and the opportunities that they provide for international students, it's a no-brainer, right? It's a no-brainer why why a lot of the times the students gravitate towards those schools, right? And going back to the Georgia State, it's just flabbergasting how a school like Georgia State offers more opportunities for internationals compared to Georgia Tech. So yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned that because that is something that I personally believe Georgia Tech can work on, especially if it wants to keep attracting more foreign talent.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I know a lot of students like that aren't as fortunate as me, especially like grad students who come in from Bangladesh or like any other country, and they have to actually work, do like jobs off campus, on campus, and try to
Mm,
fund their education, or
mm.
they sometimes have to apply for grants or scholarships or stuff like that to try to who aren't as fortunate as me. They have to do that, and yeah, it's just their situation is a bit more difficult than me. I'm in a very, like I said again, privileged position. So yeah,
Wow, wow, that's man, that's tough, man. Georgia Tech, if you're listening to this, man, look, we love you. We know you're the best university in the world, but this is something that you definitely have to fix. But yeah, so Bill, I guess this is a great segue to our last question today that I actually have for you. We covered a lot today, but before
yeah.
we
No,
end it off, yeah,
I'm just gonna cut you off there. So the other aspect of the financials I was gonna mention is that I'm not trying to reaffirm my case on anything, but I feel like if I've noticed this in the states a bit that parents like after 18 they're like, oh, leave the house. You know what I mean? Like
right.
kids leave the house. But I don't like that mentality. I think if a family has the affordability to send their school to kids to college, then they
Hmm.
should definitely help their kids through college. I see so many kids that are like their parents like might have the opportunity to at least help them out, maybe not the full ride, but like help them out with some financials, but they choose not to, and then this kid ends up taking out a loan or like financial
Mm,
aid. having to deal with so many different things that they're not aware of in terms of, and they get involved with debt without even knowing what the
Right.
consequences of it is. It's like, if parents are watching this, it's like, if you can, as much as you can, I would say, help out your kid to go through college, because even from an Islamic point of view, if any Muslim parents are watching this, like, you're supposed to help your kid through education, or through the gaining of knowledge, at least to a
Right.
certain point. I know there's a cutoff. Obviously, after one point, you have to say, okay, now you're on your own. But like,
Right.
the cutoff is not only high school education; it has to be college as well. It has to like come through, and if you can, definitely help out. And I'll bring out a short story here. I know that you're a big fan of Sundar Pichai.
Oh
Sundar
yeah, bro.
Pichai is obviously,
I love that guy, man.
yeah, I know
That's
you're
like
a
my
big,
favorite CEO, man.
yeah, I know you love that guy. Like, his story, I don't know if you know, he comes from very, very humble backgrounds
Hmm.
in like Google. And I remember when he came, he said a story about like his parents literally spent all the money they had in their savings to fund his airplane ticket to allow them
Wow.
to come
Yeah.
to, because Stanford was gonna, I think he went to Stanford. Stanford was gonna handle everything else, but he needed a plane ticket to come to the U.S. And his parents literally were like ready to did that do that. They spent all their money they had to fund his airplane ticket to come to the US, which is not cheap, I will add, especially now. Um, so, and look where he ended up. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Right.
it's
Wow. Look.
those little things people
And
don't
this
talk
man came from the bottom. Now he's at the top. He's the number
about.
one CEO in the whole world, bro. Wow. Yeah, that just goes to show that like sometimes taking the extra a step, uh, putting in that little bit of extra investment could actually pay off in the long run for your child. So I do definitely agree with that point there, Bill. To the parents that are watching this, hey, if now I'm not saying it's like an obligation. I'm just saying if you have the means to do it, I think it is really commendable if you can support your child that way. Yeah. And but yeah, Vilva, I guess before we wrap it up, I do have one last question for you. So like, what is one thing you wish you would have known before coming to the US? And also, what is one piece of advice you can leave to the viewers today, especially a soon to be international college student?
That's a that's a good question. Let me think. I guess one thing I would have wished I'd known would be that I didn't care about rankings as much. So when I applied to colleges in the U.S., my primary, I guess, filtering factor was the rankings. Like, I wouldn't apply to a certain college if they didn't have a good enough ranking or whatever.
Mm,
But what I realized after coming to the U.S. is that ranking doesn't really matter as much as the individual, him or herself. So for
mm,
what I mean by that is that if an individual can exceptionalize themselves, can make
right.
themselves stand out, they can make themselves stand out in any institution. I
Mm,
know people who've gone to, let's say, a company, SpaceX, let's say, SpaceX in like from Georgia State, like from like Tesla from Georgia State, and they've gone to George Tesla from Georgia Tech. You know what I
mm,
mean? So it's like, if they're going from both of those, I'm not calling out Georgia State or anything, but let's be honest. Objectively speaking, like, Georgia Tech is a competitive, more highly regarded school versus Georgia State. But there's people who are getting into big companies from those kind of colleges as well. So it's like, the rankings doesn't matter as much. Focus more on your individual goal, and like focus
mm,
what you're trying to achieve. And on that note, I guess it kind of segues into your second question as to what I would advise international students to do, is that instead of, maybe if you don't have the affordability, instead of going to a major college like Georgia Tech, or applying to major colleges like Georgia Tech, maybe apply for less lowly ranked, let's say lower ranked colleges like Georgia State, where it's easier to get in. They provide you with a lot more aid, and the financial burden is a lot less. And you do a couple years there and just transfer to Georgia Tech. Because let me put it this way: is that if the first couple of years you're doing the same thing regardless of the college you're going to. You're doing the same core curriculum courses. It's the same like pre-cal or basic calculus courses. It's the same humanities, social science courses. It's the same, like some science STEM subject courses, like some introductory physics or whatever courses you're doing, especially if you're doing engineering, or some chemistry courses. Like, it's all the same thing anyway. So it's like, really, it doesn't matter where you do those courses. So might as well do
mm.
it in a college that's gonna financially burden you less, versus a college that will financially burden you more because they have a higher the reputation or brand value or whatever. Because let me tell you this: the people that know Georgia Tech, or from a recruiter perspective, they don't know Georgia Tech because of its humanities courses. With all due respect, they know
Mhm.
him for the specialized engineering degrees, the specialized graduate degrees, and the specialized engineering courses and the research that's being done that's unique to this school. That's
Mm.
what they're known for. So that's what ideally what you want to pursue. So if you do 2 years somewhere else and then come here, or 3 years somewhere else and come here and finish your degree, having done those courses, then you know as much as any other Georgia Tech student. And at the end of the day, your degree will say you graduated from Georgia Tech. All Georgia Tech cares about when they're giving you a degree is that you completed your degree from Georgia Tech. They don't care where you
Mm.
started. They don't really care where you started. It doesn't matter where you started. It doesn't matter where you like ended up. So it's like,
Hey, it's not about where you start; it's about where you finish.
and no, yeah, it's actually that's how it comes out. It's like my advice to anybody would be like that. Like really think about if it's actually worth taking the financial hit and going to a higher, better known school. It really
Mm.
doesn't make a difference because you just you just do those same courses regardless. So just do it in a school that's going to be way cheaper, like Georgia State, and then
Right.
transfer in, and finish strong. So it's like
Yeah,
that's my
you know,
advice.
Bill, that's actually an interesting perspective there because this advice that you just gave out, it can apply to both international students as well as in-state
Yeah,
students, right?
exactly.
Like for example, me looking back at my life, you know, just from going from the advice that you gave, I could have saved myself thousands, tens of thousands of dollars of money by going to like, a smaller school first, right? Maybe I could have started off at Georgia State first, and then in 2 3 years, then transfer over to Georgia Tech, right? And that could have saved me tens of thousands of dollars. So
Absolutely, yeah.
that's actually a really nice bit of advice right there. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, there, like you said, it actually applies to everybody, not just
Yeah,
international. But yeah,
exactly. Wow, wow, man. This podcast, this episode today, bro, it was extremely insightful, bro. We spoke about a lot of stuff. I guess to recap, bro, we spoke about COVID. We spoke about international, you leaving a different country 8,000 miles away, coming to the US. We spoke about the whole paperwork stuff, right, with the visas. We spoke about your Dubai trip. We spoke about when you first got here, the difficulties and, some of the people that helped you out with, right? And then the culture shock, the differences, and then the financial disparities, and then we ended off by saying what you wish you would know. This was actually a very, very powerful episode today. I really hope that the viewers got a lot of benefit from it, man. Wow. This is actually really awesome. So I guess to close it off, everybody, thank you all so much for tuning in today. We really hope that you all enjoyed this episode. Please continue giving us feedback. Please continue following all of our social media platforms. And Bill, do you have any last remarks?
yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. You guys know the drill. Subscribe to the YouTube. Leave a like, leave a comment down in the video. Follow our Spotify. Please play this podcast if you want to listen to it or watch it on YouTube. Whatever really helps us out. Follow our Instagrams and TikToks and for more behind the scenes kind of things. So
Sure.
yeah, that's basically it. This is Barry and Bill, I guess, signing out.
Barry and Bill signing out.
Okay. How do I